In today's world, more than ever before, it's imperative that regions, organizations, and institutions like UBC have a comprehensive and effective emergency plan in place, one that's been thought through and practiced to ensure its viability and effectiveness when dealing with the unthinkable. When time is of the essence, lives are at stake, and wisdom must prevail. Today's guest, Shelley Kayfish, Director of Campus Operations and Risk Management, has years of hands-on experience with planning, organizing, participating, and reviewing our universities and regions' emergency preparedness program. That's coming up next on UBC's Next Big Thing. Shelley, thank you for coming today and sharing with us your expertise. Talk a little bit about how important it is for our communities and organizations like UBC to be prepared for emergencies.
Oh, very important, Rosemary. I mean, if there's one thing that the news has taught us is, and continues to teach us, is that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Whether they be human-made or natural disasters, we need to be prepared. Otherwise, it's going to result in unnecessary pain and suffering.
So why has UBC taken on such an active role in the community in regards to emergency preparedness?
I think first and foremost we recognize that we're not on our own and we're heavily reliant on our regional partners to assist with the majority of emergencies we may face, whether it's the small kind of structural fire or something more significant like a campus-wide power outage or more. We need them to work with us to respond in an effective and meaningful way.
UBC is really like a small community within itself. I often think about it as a small little village. How many people we have here? Up to about 10,000 at any given time. So that's a lot of people to be concerned about and to care about. So with that in mind, what kinds of programs has the university put in place around emergency preparedness?
We have a community that wants to be engaged. Our village wants to be engaged. And so I remember even back in 2005, one of our first programs was in our emergency warden program. We have about 100 volunteers that play an essential role with respect to safe evacuation of our campus buildings. Since 2005, it's evolved substantially to a more robust emergency program that includes everything from procedures that we test annually, either in tabletop exercises or full-scale exercises, to the creation of an emergency call center. We recognize that communication is key to any response.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Ubc Alert program, because that's a relatively new one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
One of the things we recognized a couple of years ago was that communicating those imminent dangers is something where we need to blast something out to the entire community, faculty, staff, and students within minutes or seconds, I guess I would say, was virtually impossible through our existing communication channels. While they can prove very effective for managing many other emergencies, if we need to get that message out, it needed to be done very quickly. Ubc Alert allows us, through subscriptions, so faculty, staff, and students do need to subscribe, a mechanism to send out a message to cell phones, both in terms of text and voicemail, and our digital displays. Each one of our buildings has digital displays, and that message is also broadcasted out through those displays. So even if we have members of the public, or contractors within our buildings, or those without cell phones, they're seeing this within our buildings. And that's a significant contribution to making a safer community for us all.
I remember when that came out, we got notifications about this alert system. I was like on it right away. I subscribed right away. So I'm thankful for what the university's put together in that.
The rollout for UBC Alert, because we work so closely with university relations, we saw an uptake of almost 5,000 subscribers within a very short period of time of rolling that program out. We're looking to broadcast those messages out within the classrooms. So for example, if you're in a lecture theater and whether the projector is on or off, linking UBC Alert to those projector screens so that they're activated, and regardless of what's going on in that lecture theater, it's broadcasted as a priority.
The interesting thing, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, but we don't just assume the system is going to work. we always practice. UBC's been involved in many emergency exercises over the years, both internally and I know as part of the community exercises. So how have we and our little village here benefited by staging emergency scenarios? So actually practicing possibilities and making sure the system works.
So our first full-scale exercise was back in 2010. And it involved the evacuation of a residence, and we worked very closely with emergency services, so police, fire, and ambulance, as well as our own campus security and facility managers, to test our ability to deal with a fire in residences and the ramifications that come from that. So we had student actors for the first time that played casualties that were brought out of the building, treated by BC Ambulance Services. Rosemary, you will remember because we recruited you as well as the media.
A very obnoxious media person, by the way.
Well, it was well done. And just to put pressure on not only the university but emergency services to communicate with the media. And one of our biggest lessons learned from that exercise was the ramifications of not doing that and what can happen to the messaging if that falls short. I think we've learned a little bit about that with every exercise we've done because we recognize that the media can play a critical role. We have our own mechanisms for getting factual information out in a timely way, but we need all the help we can get. And if the media knows that they are really a partner with us in this and they can help get that word out both within our own community and externally, that's very positive for us.
It is, it's true, and I know as being a member of the media community that's important to us because we want to do our job. We want to get that message out and we want to do it as effectively and as on target and on task as we possibly can. So I appreciated that exercise as well. Talk a little bit, you mentioned it before, an emergency call center.
Right.
What is it and how does it function?
Through our 2011 exercise, Blazing Hills, the scenario revolved around a large-scale evacuation. And one of the things we recognized is that it's one thing to blast information one way, but when you're dealing with students that are being relocated, the possible international family member that is looking for their student or looking for information on their student, or our student, we didn't have something to really support that. And so we partnered with the Canadian Red Cross to put together an emergency call center, which is your neighbor in terms of the facility that we would use. The Red Cross was instrumental in terms of working with us to develop training criteria, and we recruited over 20 faculty staff volunteers to staff the call center. And they became really not just that warm voice, but that two-way communication. So if there was information that was provided to us from the community, whether it's how they can support us, or it is that family member looking for information on their child, we had the vehicle to do that. And so that has become a part of our overall emergency program, and we now test that as part of our emergency exercises.
On a regular basis. I've seen that happen. I know you've done quite a few exercises that involve the region as well. So let's talk about what UBC is doing to help improve its emergency preparedness programs with the region. What's been in place for that?
I think Operation Unity was a really big year for that. If there's one thing that Operation Unity did, and that was in 2012, was it tested the interoperability of over 40 different agencies that were needed to support essentially a disaster.
What was the scenario of that one?
In the region. It involved an aircraft leaving the Kelowna International Airport en route to Calgary, and somewhere in between it was hijacked. As a result, the plane was damaged, and through a number of different mishaps ended up making its way back to the Kelowna International Airport, and that is where it crashed. And so from a UBC perspective, we played a relatively large role with respect to the script. First of all, we had a number of our performance students from creative and critical studies that actually played the casualties on the plane. Some of these students had to get up or actually be on site as early as midnight to start with the makeup routine, which was phenomenal in terms of...
Very realistic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and not just for makeup, but they were also given scripts because they were instrumental in testing the effectiveness of the RCMP and the fire department and BC Ambulance Services in terms of responding to them as casualties. From there, they were taken to Kelowna General Hospital, so it was quite involved. Other students played belligerent parents and concerned parties within the airport, so they were fully integrated within the scenario, and it was quite a thing to see. Another area was that the script had the occupants on the plane. They were our athletic students. And so it was a basketball team on its way to play a game in Calgary. So it was everything from how do we quickly identify which of our students made it on the plane and account for them when the calls from the parents start coming in. With the plane coming back over campus, we had worked it in so that there was a fuel dump and possible water contamination. The takeaway from that was, and it goes back to UBC Alert again, is that need to be able to communicate incredibly quickly with respect to the entire population on instructions to keep them safe. The event ended up with a press conference. Press was invited into our ballroom, and we had numerous different agencies, including UBC and Interior Health, and of course the Kelowna Fire Department and others, as kind of the wrap-up to the exercise. So it was invaluable. It was invaluable just in that it showed not just the importance of that interoperability, but reiterating the need to continue to improve those relationships and work together. So it was kudos to our regional emergency program for pulling it all together. We were quite privileged to be a part of that.
It was remarkable how people were working together. You know, we got to see it from beginning to end, and I felt really assured that should there be a real emergency at any given time, that our community, our university, regional agencies are ready and prepared to take that on, which is, it gives you a sense of peace, which is important.
You know, it's absolutely amazing, Rosemary, how much support we have for emergency management on both our campuses, Vancouver and the Okanagan, from our executive leadership team right down to the volunteers and the students that want to get engaged. It's quite phenomenal. One of the most profound photos that I saw as part of Operation Unity was our executive team actually walking through the plane, observing the students when they were in their seats and the cameras were ready to roll, and just that realization of how far we've come and what we can do going forward.
Thank you very much for taking time to come and talk to us. I know we didn't even cover half the things I wanted to talk about, but perhaps you can come back and visit us again.
That would be great. Thank you very much, Rosemary.
And that wraps up this edition of UBC's Next Big Thing. Until next time, I'm Rosemary Jean Thompson. Make it a great week.